On any given night, there's about 1,000 people living in our community without a house. They're in our public spaces, in our emergency shelters, in cars, in our daily rate hotels. While these individuals are often referred to as homeless, a more adequate description would be houseless. Absent in their lives is the means to acquire and maintain a physical, tangible structure from which to reside in. And the only thing that's going to solve their houselessness are houses. Now, I have this discussion with community members all the time. Business leaders, government leaders, social service providers, and the hundreds of community members that donate both their time and treasure to support this issue. They always ask the same two questions. How did we get here, and what do we do to solve it? As a young mental health counselor, I wasn't able to construct a real substantive answer to those questions. That wasn't until I met a gentleman that I'm going to refer to as Jamie. Jamie has spent most of his adult life homeless. He spent more time under a bridge than under a roof. He's schizophrenic, alcoholic. In the last several years, he's been in and out of the emergency room dozens of times, sometimes for medical reasons, sometimes just to come in out of the cold. If we had to count all the times that Jamie went to jail, they would probably equal his emergency room visits, sometimes for public intox, sometimes for simple trespassing, and sometimes just to get in and out of the cold. I've spent hours and hours discussing the world with Jamie. And through those conversations, I noticed something. Never once did Jamie say he wanted to be houseless. In fairness, he never said he didn't either. It was like that part of his life was a fact, that his existence didn't include what most of us would call a house. So one day, I just asked Jamie, why no house? And Jamie simply stated that his mother had told him that there were no houses for them anymore. You see, the backstory here is that Jamie's mother is also schizophrenic, and she spent most of her teenage and adult life living in state-run mental institutions. That wasn't until the 1960s, when we as a nation made a choice not to incarcerate or not to warehouse our mentally ill, and rightfully so. We did this for two reasons. One, better treatment of the mentally ill, and two, to reduce government spending. To put this in context, in 1955, about 500,000 people lived in a state-run institution, about 0.03% of the population. If that same percentage of the population was in an institution today, it would be about 750,000 people, roughly the size of the city of either San Francisco or Baltimore. Now, I'm not advocating that we return to the practice of institutionalizing the mentally ill. What I am advocating for is that we practice inclusion in our local and national housing policies in order to recognize that individuals like Jamie and his mother are in our communities, and we as a nation decided that they should be. See, communities, like houses, are built on three constructs: resources, access to those resources, and the values we use to distribute them. So in other words, the construction and allocation of affordable housing for chronically homeless individuals like Jamie does not rest solely on the shoulders of housing developers. They cannot build a single house in our community until we tell them how, what, and where to build. In other words, they need to know our values. And we as a community express those values on ballots. Simply put, hammers do not build houses, ballots do. Our city, like many southern cities, does not have a resource problem. We're fiscal leaders in both commerce and hospitality. The challenge is in how we distribute those resources and the values we use to distribute it. And the notion that the Southern work ethic is the measure of both one's success and deservedness to one of life's most basic of needs, housing. Ironically, the Southern work ethic is veiled in the notion of Southern hospitality. And while people like Jamie and his mother do make meaningful contributions to our community, oftentimes they're not able to work what most of us would consider to be a standard work week. The bootstrap mentality works for the vast majority of us, but we also must consider that some of us have no boots, much less straps to pull. As we continue to experience fiscal progress in our community, we're going to have to make a choice. Do individuals like Jamie and his mother have a right to access housing in our community? If the answer is no, then we should not be surprised when they're in our public spaces, living under our bridges, or panhandling in our streets. There is no other place for that part of the population to go. We closed those facilities decades ago, and rightfully so. Once again, I'm not advocating that we return to the practice of institutionalizing the mentally ill. I'm advocating that we say no to that question and that we say yes, that those individuals do have a right to access housing in our communities. And we do so under a very simple set of values. One, that Southern hospitality is an inclusionary term and that it starts right here in the hostess city. Two, that all community members have a right to access housing in our community. And three, that the collective impact of social change is possible through voting. In order for this to work, we need government, business, and social service providers to embrace these values strategically and when they're planning and designing our communities and neighborhood. It should be done with intention and without segregation. If for no other reason, it's simply just more expensive not to house Jamie or to house him after the fact. The average cost of an ER visit in our country is about $1,000 a visit. So if Jamie goes to the ER one time a month for a non-medical reason, we will have spent about $12,000 a year. If he's picked up by local police for a public nuisance type of charge and spends 2 to 3 nights in jail every month, that's about another $2,000 a year. So if we take those averages times the average of chronically homeless individuals that are in our community, about 638, we're spending about $8.9 million a year on ER visits and jail time alone. The average rent in our community is about $900 a month. If we take that average times the amount of chronically homeless individuals in our community, it's $6.9 million. In other words, we're spending an extra $2 million a year on average to have a houseless problem. Is this who we are? What we're doing now does not demonstrate the best of Southern hospitality. But, all right, through collective action, through garnering our values, we can create spaces in our community as it continues to grow for individuals like Jamie and his mother to be among us, because we as a nation decided that that's where they should be. Thank you.